The Iowa Hawkeyes are Big Ten champions on the women's side and a missed opportunity from the Hawkeye men. We break it all down, a weekend recap in hoops. Today, Locked On Hawkeye.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. This episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. Well, getting to you a little bit late this week as we were out and about. I had a little family vacation. Took the kids down to St. Louis for a couple of days, so we are late getting back to you here on a Tuesday, but a plenty to recap and a big week ahead for Iowa basketball. And look back at the Big Ten tournament win for the Iowa women. The Iowa men with the opportunity against Illinois, they let that one slip by, and what could have been a winnable game, a slow start, and as they battled their way back, opportunities that just could not get over the hump. Some frustration, certainly, but let's start on the positive side here, and let's kick things off with the Big Ten tournament champions, the Iowa women, in a championship game that came down to the wire, a game that we hadn't seen very often, certainly from this group, being down in the game like they had been against Nebraska. I mean, you have to give a ton of credit to the Cornhuskers and what they were able to do. The ability to knock down shots throughout, making big plays. Every time it seemed like they needed to come up with a big one, they were there seemingly every single time. And I walked away, the game against Nebraska earlier this season where Iowa let the lead slip away. You had Caitlin Clark playing with the, at least very much on the horizon, the scoring championship that was in front of her. Maybe wanted to do it at home. She was 0 for 6 in that fourth quarter. It was just such a weird game. And I don't think it told us a whole lot about the Iowa team. You let one slip away. You had after the game being upset, Lisa Bluter upset, not going by protocol. And the Nebraska women were up there at the press conference when the visiting team was supposed to be the first one there. I mean, there was a lot that went on. It was kind of some goofiness there. But that's what it was. Just a goofy outcome. Not so much here. Nebraska from Jazz Shelley, what she was able to do, 16 points and 13 assists. How Nebraska was able to really slow down what Iowa wanted to do. And though, of course, Iowa ends with 94 points in the game, it took a long time to get there. It was 77 all after regulation. They did a great job of really slowing Iowa down. And what Iowa loves to do in those secondary breaks, after either made baskets or even after rebounds and outletting, getting out quickly, they had a defender there to slow things down. And Iowa had to get in then to their full set offense and doing things that way. I just walked away really impressed with what they did. A game where it wasn't a great shooting performance overall. Caitlin has 34 points, 12 assists, and 7 rebounds in the game, along with 3 steals, but just 12 of 29 shooting, 5 of 17 from behind the arc. It was one of those kind of performances. But again, as we've been hoping for, if this team's going to make a run in the NCAA tournament, they need everybody. They need everybody to step up, and you certainly got that. Asita Fulcher didn't shoot the ball incredibly well, but she was impactful in a myriad of different ways. Double-double in the game, 11 points, but her 11 rebounds. And just how different this team is with her out there in the starting lineup. They're just built differently than when Molly Davis is in the lineup. And it's something that they had to play with a couple of times this year when Molly Davis had a little injury and she was sick for a while. They had to deal with it, but it also wasn't anything that they thought they were going to have to deal with long-term. And we'll still await what the decision is going to be on Molly Davis. I anticipate we're going to find out some more this week about exactly what that's going to look like, what exactly it's going to be for her availability come the first and second round. Is it the Sweet 16? Is that even a possibility for this one? But in a game where you don't have Caitlin Clark shooting the ball incredibly well, how about Hannah Stuelke, again, doing her performance inside? And though I don't think it's as consistent as we'd like to see from Hannah Stuelke, what she did during this tournament, the last 2 games against Michigan, 16 points in 17 minutes in that game, and then playing 40 minutes in the game, 25 points, 9 rebounds. She was all over the place, couple of block shots. She was just outstanding. 3 of 5 from the free throw line. That's another impactful part of this one, too, that you really need from her. I mean, you need Stuelke to be able to stay in there, stay out of foul trouble, be on the floor. And when she is fouled, and that's going to happen plenty, she's got to be up there and hitting at minimum 60. Like that to be closer to 70% from the free throw line. Feuerbach didn't shoot it very well. In fact, only had one shot opportunity. Didn't score. McCabe came in there, knocked down a three-pointer. But again, these are the little role players that we talk about. The importance, though, of them going forward. And to win a Big Ten tournament, the path was not overly difficult compared to what they could have seen. Indiana was bagged up. They eventually blow the lead and get beat by get beat by Michigan in the quarterfinal round. Iowa was cruising. They cruised against Penn State, did the same against Michigan, and though it was hard fought, you get it done. It's just crazy to think. 4 years of Caitlin Clark, 4 championship games, 3 titles, 3 in a row to wrap things up. The Final Four a year ago, the run to the championship game, what's still in front of them, and just the crowd. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. Now, bad work out of the Target Center and the Big Ten of having no reserve seating, or not, I shouldn't say no, little reserve seating. So much of it was general admission, led to ridiculous lines, people having to stand there for hours and hours on end to try to get into this stadium, into the arena, and try to get themselves at least a decent seat for the game. That's something in hindsight they absolutely should have fixed, but look, is this going to be something that is going to be happening going forward? Probably not at this kind of level. Still, that was a missed opportunity. We saw what was happening, what was transpiring throughout the course of this season. This is something that the Big Ten should have been in front of. The Target Center should have been in front of this and understand that general admission is not the way to go. You're going to have a sold-out building. It's going to be even more incredible than it was a year ago. We saw that building, and they didn't do that. Bad work out of them. That's something that they definitely need to get fixed. But overall, another championship. You feel great. Now for the Iowa women. They sit here currently in the latest bracket from ESPN as the number 2 overall seed. And that is incredibly important. We talked about it going into the Big Ten tournament, what a tournament championship could be for them and what it would be. Now we thought there'd be another quad 1 quality victory against a team like perhaps Ohio State, against Indiana. That didn't play out, but as the Pac-12 continues to beat each other up, we see USC ascend and what they were able to do getting the championship and the automatic qualifying bid after winning the Big Pac-12 championship, getting up there. They're now the number 1 seed. Stanford's still a number 1 seed. They're also there. So you got both those teams up there. Of course, Iowa and then South Carolina. After the craziness that was the SEC, here's the thing. Be a number 2, number 3 seed. The difference is negligible between the two. Now, number 2 is a little bit better. Perhaps you're going to get an easier path to get there over the number 3 seed. But, I mean, the only difference, if all number 1 seeds make it to the Final Four, make it to Cleveland this year, the only thing that matters then in that first semifinal, if you're the 2 seed or the number 3 overall seed, is what color jersey that you're wearing. I mean, that's the only difference that you're going to have there. But the importance of that, Iowa looks in really good shape, not only of having a number 1 seed, potentially being the number 2 or number 3 overall seed. What that means, staying away from South Carolina as long as possible. Though we saw over the weekend, maybe the South Carolina team is not as invincible as they felt for a long portion. Took a 3-pointer at the horn from Cardoza to beat Tennessee in the semifinals, and then against LSU in the championship game. Certainly didn't play at their highest level in that game, even though they ended up cruising to the victory. Yeah, the fight that happened in it, I mean, just so much going on there. The most important thing, though, is the Iowa perspective and the way that it sets up. Of course, the first 2 games will be in Iowa City, then the Sweet 16. You're either going to Albany or you're going to Portland. Doesn't matter, I don't think, greatly. The one concern would be if you do get shipped to Albany for that Sweet 16 Elite 8, potentially UConn could be there, number 3 seed. If they come out, they win their game and get to the Elite 8, you'd be playing UConn, and it's going to be a road game. I mean, that's going to be what you're going to be seeing there. So that's kind of what you have in front of us, but we are now just 5 days away from getting the bracket in front of us. Still much more happening in the women's side of things as we get the bracket ready for that one. We are the same days away from the men's side. Will the Iowa Hawkeyes be involved? We'll get into that. A loss to Illinois that definitely was a frustrating one. And now what is it going to take for this team to be an NCAA tournament team? We'll talk about the men as we continue. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The Nissan Rogue. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is perfect for mid-size crossover for your next adventure. How about the 2024 Nissan Armada? Will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. Tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. That's NissanUSA.com. Trent Condon back with you once again here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. As always, thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Time to bounce over to the men, and though it was a disappointing performance on Sunday night, all eyes really in men's college basketball were on the Hawkeyes, an opportunity against Illinois to get it done. You fall down right away, 24-8. You battled back. A great first half out of Brock Harding. I mean, he really came to play, and we know the connections. If you haven't heard it before, family grew up Illini fans, brother played baseball over there, had everything, never got an offer. And in fact, his best offer when he committed to Iowa was the Hawkeyes. So he becomes a Hawkeye. And though I'm sure it's a little bit weird for the family growing up Illini to be rooting for the Hawkeyes, you're rooting for your son. He went out there and really kept Iowa back in the game. 6.6 assists. He plays just 14 minutes, though. Didn't see him as much as I thought we were going to in the second half of the game. Peyton Sanford, he did the same kind of thing that we've really grown accustomed to throughout the course of this game. He has 23.7 rebounds in the game, times battling against some bigger guys inside, doing a good job on the boards, though just 5 of 13 from behind the arcs. Josh Dix didn't have it. 0 of 3 from behind the line. Finishes with 13 points, but need him to knock down some of those three-pointers. Tony Perkins plays 27 minutes, 2 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. And that's the one. I get it. It's Tony Perkins, potentially his final game in Carver Hawkeye Arena. You want to give him the most opportunity possible for him to make a look forward, to be able to make the push and to figure it out. And we've seen it enough from him throughout his career. We've seen at times where he has struggled. And because of that, you're left saying, all right, he's going to figure it out in the second half. It never happened. Iowa now sits at 18-13 overall. They are 60th in the net rankings. Against Quad 1, they are 3-8. Quad 2 loss record is 5-3. So that puts you at a combined 8-11 against the top 2 quads, but now 2 Quad 3 losses, the home losses to Michigan and now Maryland, as they've gone the other way. You want the Terps to win a game, maybe win 2 in the Big Ten tournament. You're going to be rooting for them to make a little bit of a run here and potentially get one of those ugly losses off your resume if they can make a little bit of a push. But Maryland now, after they've fallen down, we talked a lot about Minnesota and potentially them getting into the top 75. That hasn't happened. Now Maryland sits at 77 as they continue to go down. So that's kind of what you're looking at in terms of potential help for your quadrant help when you're going through the numbers there. But eventually, that doesn't matter. What matters is Iowa's got to get wins. And it's not just going to be one victory against Ohio State. And suddenly, Ohio State has played themselves back on the bubble, something that was unthinkable just a few weeks back. But they've caught fire. They're playing some really good basketball. And after they get rid of their coach, you're left thinking, all right, well, this is going to be ugly, right? This is going to be a team that's going to just fall by the wayside. They're going to be dead team walking. That has not been the case for the Buckeyes at all. So Iowa obviously needs to open up, and they have to get a win there. Then it'll be Illinois after that. So here are the numbers for you. Again, these come from Bart Torvik. You can play around with the website, barttorvik.com, B-A-R-T, Bart, like Bart Simpson, Torvik, T-O-R-V-I-K, barttorvik.com is where you can go. And you can do the same thing in their TeamCast page over there where you can kind of play around and see exactly what it would be. So going into the Big Ten tournament, Iowa right now has an 11.7% chance of making the NCAA tournament. Now, if you beat Ohio State and then lose the next game to Illinois, your chances increase, but they're still not very good. 28.6% chance of making the NCAA tournament. And even then, sitting at 19-14, I just don't see it. You win 2, though. Now we're cooking. In fact, if Iowa wins 2 games, his projection site has Iowa not only being an NCAA tournament team, their chances increase to nearly 60% of the time they become an NCAA tournament team. In his little bracket projection, they're actually the last team that moves outside of a bye. So though they would still be an 11 seed, they wouldn't be shipped to Dayton in that scenario. They would be playing a 6 seed right away without having to play that play-in game against Dayton. So that's what's in front of this Iowa team. There's still huge opportunities for them to get it done. It is there, but got to play a whole lot better than they did on Sunday night. And, the question now becomes about Fran McCaffery, about his future and what it looks like. And I understand many of the arguments that are out there. I get it. I keep coming back to this. We're in very much the same situation that we were with Dr. Tom Davis at the end of his tenure. And in fact, though the numbers are better for Iowa basketball now than they were in Dr. Tom, for whatever reason, the fan base has made the decision that they're out. And I made my arguments for Fran, why he should stay. I don't believe that the next coach will be an improvement, but I understand the other side. 25 years without making it to the Sweet 16, a quarter century without getting to the second weekend. Fran's had 14 of those years, 14 of those opportunities. And though they make the tournament more times than not, they made it, and they just haven't played well there. Now, I've also argued, people that say that's all it is a Sweet 16 and think everything would be. I said this a week ago. If Iowa would have won that game against Tennessee, go back 5 years ago, Iowa, beat Cincinnati in the first round. Great comeback to win that game against the Bearcats. Then they get the Vols. They're getting throttled. They're down 18. They come roaring back. They force overtime. If Iowa would have won that game, I still don't think that the fan base suddenly would all be embracing Fran at this moment in time. That's not what it is. There's a myriad of factors that have led to a lot of people being out on Fran. And maybe he hasn't been the warm, cuddly guy. People just don't like that Philly toughness that comes with him. They don't like the way that the histrionics on the sidelines. Look, I would rather have that compared to some of the other guys that we've had on the sidelines, right? I don't like the way that he goes from 0 to 100, and I think that hurts him with officials when things go awry. But that aside, the likelihood that I was going to be able to find a coach that is going to be able to do a better job consistently than Fran McCaffery, I think it's slight, but you haven't got there. And you still have that argument. You just continue to have that argument, and there's nothing that's going to change it because it's fact. Iowa hasn't been to a Sweet 16 in 25 years. And until that happens, it's going to be used against them. Fair or unfair, that is the reality. And that's where we are right now. Iowa's got to win 2 games at minimum to feel good about being in the NCAA tournament. And heck, at that point, you beat Ohio State, you beat Illinois, you're facing, Indiana or Nebraska in the semifinals on Saturday on CBS. Well, at that point, let's just go win the whole damn thing, right? I mean, we're already talking about kind of playing it forward and what it's going to take. Let's just keep going here. I love the resiliency of this team. I love the way that they battle back. They have been left for dead so many different times this year. And the future, it is bright. But you must win games. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that future, what it's going to look like here, and set the stage for what we have coming up this week. We'll do that as we continue. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers out there, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all with the Futures tab. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Trent Condon back with you one final time here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. So we've laid out what it's going to take for Iowa to have a realistic shot of being an NCAA tournament team. We talked about the women and what it's going to look like. What about the future and how things play out? And that's what I want to get into here as we wrap things up. So Iowa, however, on the men's side, it comes to a close. In the NCAA tournament or in the NIT, whenever it comes to a close, we look towards the future. And the future that I still think Fran McCaffery is going to be a part of it. Look, you can't fire a coach with the success that he has had. You just can't do it at this point in time. We're looking at 5 consecutive NCAA tournaments, 5 out of 6 years. He finally misses one and he's out. At a program like Iowa, look, we're not talking Kentucky here. We're not talking Indiana. We're not talking Purdue. We're talking Iowa and Iowa basketball. And this is what Iowa basketball has been for the better part of now 35 years. This is what they are. A team that can make the NCAA tournament more years than not. But that's about it. Win a game, get in there, win a game, and that's kind of the ceiling. Now, crazy things can happen. We've seen that happen. And would you rather have Iowa's program that has made 5 consecutive NCAA tournaments or be Oregon State? They made an Elite Eight. That's also the only appearance that they've had over the last 2 decades in the NCAA tournament. But they made the second weekend. Would you rather Wayne Tinkle or would you rather have Fran McCaffery? I think it's a pretty easy choice. Be careful what you wish for. And the future looks really good. So next season, we'll see Patrick McCaffery depart. We will see Tony Perkins potentially move on. You got the moving parts there. But obviously what we've seen out of the freshmen this year, Owen Freeman goes without saying. I mean, just an absolute stud, a building block kind of piece, a guy that can do a whole lot. And now what your offseason is going to be is figuring out what kind of big works best with Owen Freeman. I think you're going to see his range increase. You saw him as a high school player. He was able to knock down an open jumper and hasn't really tried it very much. He was more of a back to the basket kind of guy, tenacious inside, really heady player, smart with angles, has the explosion to get up, dunk it. I mean, he has everything that you want. Pretty good defender on top of it. Now needs to stay out of foul trouble, but you talk about a building block. A lot of teams in the country would be very happy to start their team with the sophomore Owen Freeman. From there, Brock Harding. Is he a guy that you believe can be a starter? That's up to Fran McCaffery to figure out. Is he a starter or is he a full-time backup role? I think he can still be very good. Do you use some kind of stopgap? I think that makes the most sense. And taking the bad taste out of the mouth of the last game by Tony Perkins. He's shown enough here during this stretch that he can be your guy in the backcourt, and you feel really good about that. What else do you need? Is it a shooter to go along with it? If it's Perkins out there with Sanford, with Freeman, and one other starter, do you need another shooter out there? Another guy that can fill it up? Is it Josh Dix? Do we expect his role to continue to go forward? I think that's definitely going to be a big component of what this is going to look like. So figuring out what the big situation is. Riley Mulvey redshirted this year. Did the light bulb suddenly come on? I'm not holding my breath. All right, you look at that part of it. What does it mean for the 2 incoming guys next year? Cooper Koch comes in, really good shooter from the outside, good size at 6'8". He can fill it up from the outside. Is he more of a finesse player? Can him and Freeman play together? Are those 2 guys that kind of the way and their differences of the game, would those 2 marry each other and work out incredibly well? Chris Taggio, is he a guy that can come in and be instant impact at minimum on the defensive end of the floor and the rebounding? That's what we hear about him, is he is a tenacious guy on the glass. Is that something that makes a whole lot of sense? But pieces are there. I think the opportunity for this team, we saw a little bit out of Price Sanford this year. You're excited about that. There's enough there that with the right additions to this team, not only are the NCAA tournament team next year, they're once again fighting to be a top 5 team in the Big Ten, be an NCAA tournament team, and heck, maybe a little bit more. That's how high I'm at. Now, what also does Fran do about the defense? This has been every single year. The likelihood, nothing will change. They will continue to do the same things that they do. The thing that's frustrating, it's one thing to be bad defensively just because of physical limitations, right? You're just not good enough. You're not athletic enough. You can't move your feet fast enough to be a good defender. But it's also, you look and you just wonder, what in God's name are they doing? I mean, just how many missteps there are and how many wide open threes. They try to run that junk zone and it just looks hideous. And you got 2 guys that are coming to the ball when only one be, and they're not connected. Fran loves to talk about being connected. So many times they're not connected on the defensive end of the floor. I've long maintained the best thing to do would be bring in a defensive specialist, somebody that you can hand the reins off. Don't touch the offense because it's elite. And it doesn't matter the parts, Fran, he figures out a way on that side of the court every single time. Somebody to help out defensively would go a long, long way. So that's what we look at going forward. And then the women, boy, this is going to be odd. I mean, playing without Caitlin Clark next year, of course, Gabby Marshall moving on. Well, Kate Martin, their eligibility has come to a close, and how different that team's going to be. And who's the point guard? As Guyton, who was coming in, a lot of people thought was going to be the heir apparent at the point guard position. Well, she tore her ACL about a month ago. Even if she's ready at the beginning, she's not going to be full system go by the time they get to October camp. So you got that part of it to look at. And what do? Do you go into the portal and look for somebody at least for a year to help out? With Stolke, we've seen enough out of Feuerbach. I definitely think that you have the pieces to be an NCAA tournament team next year. But again, they got to do work in the portal, and it's something that they haven't been real heavy on this last couple of off season. I think that's something, if you're going to continue the momentum and not just be a team good enough to be an NCAA tournament team, but make your way into becoming a women's blue blood. That's going to be a big part of it, of finding those right building blocks. And obviously we'll talk about that more here going forward. Locked On Hawkeyes, your team every day. That's what we do across the Locked On Network. And we got you covered on the Hawkeyes front. Not just that, your team, Major League Baseball, as we get closer and closer to opening day, we got you covered there. NBA, NHL. Of course, it is the goofy season going on right now in the NFL with free agency. We got you covered there. Your team every day. And Locked On has also launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's available on Amazon Fire TV, on the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Be back with you tomorrow. Happy to be back here in the great state of Iowa, and plenty to talk about. We got you covered. Your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Network. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Go Hawks.